waterboarding.
They're talking about wakeboarding. The thing about wakeboarding, every trick is an invert.
Backside.
Side, air railies.
A new dimension.
Everybody is going huge.
What do you think about waterboarding? I said, I like it a lot, but I don't think it's tough enough.
All right, here we go. We're here with another episode of the Grab Matters podcast. Today we got Scot Ferwerda. How you doing, Scott?
Hi, Hunter. I'm doing awesome. It's so good to be here.
Good to have you on. I'm stoked. We're here at Action Wake Park. Been kind of both our stomping grounds for quite some time now. So let's kind of jump right into it, Scott. How did you first get into wakeboarding?
Well, Hunter, so grew up here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where we are right now, where Action Wake Park is. We're just outside of Grand Rapids. But I grew up here in Grand Rapids, and my family, like tons of other families in Michigan, has a cottage, right? Up north, everybody says, oh, go up north Michigan, to the cottage. Grew up on the water skiing. I think my dad had me on the water at like age 3 or 4.
Wow.
Super early, just ripping, pulling me, across the shoreline, basically. But so obviously wakeboarding wasn't invented back then. Started water skiing until I was like 14 years old, pretty aggressively, I would say.
Like competitively or?
Not competitively,
Okay.
but yeah, slaloming, like trying to, throw big walls of water as big as I could at 14. But and then wakeboarding kind of came out and, hey, Dad, let me get a wakeboard, Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's just, one other thing at the cottage, and it just took off from there.
Okay. So how did you discover wakeboarding? Were other people on your lake doing it? Did you go to Action? Were they around back then?
Yeah, right. Action was around back then. Actually, I think my first wakeboard was an O'Brien Evil Twin. Yes, purchased at Action Watersports.
Okay.
Probably 1997. I think would be the year.
Okay.
Roughly. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. You could try and stay a little closer to the mic. Perfect. All right. So you're water skiing, you're wakeboarding. Are you doing any other sports? I know you mentioned you used to play basketball.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So big like team sports dude, right? Up until basically wakeboarding hit. Big basketball guy. Not so much like soccer, but I played football. And then wakeboarding hit, and man, it was just like team sports just
Didn't do it for you.
Didn't do it for me anymore. Started wakeboarding that year, started snowboarding pretty good that year, and then it was just like, I don't think I can, hack this whole team sport thing.
Yeah.
The team sports I was in were during the winter, and in Michigan, we all know like that's snowboard time.
Yeah.
And that's what I chose.
Okay. Yeah. So you found standing sideways and really kind of took a liking to it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you grow up on a lake? I know you mentioned you go up north. So did you move onto a lake, or were you ever living on a lake?
No. So always just had the cottage, just there on the weekends. Once I did get into wakeboarding a little bit though, I met a couple people like in here town, 15, 20 minutes from my house, who like a couple guys had a boat, were able to pull me, were excited to have me over and ride with them. One being Grassman. He was kind of my one dude who, me and him were really the only two in Grand Rapids, Michigan that were really into, wakeboarding and wanted to go every day. So it was just natural, like, we rode together every day.
Okay.
Much.
And he lived on a lake and he had a boat?
He did. Yep. He lived on a lake, just a little man-made lake. His dad had a boat in the backyard and was super excited to have somebody else to ride with his kid, basically, because like I said, not many people were into this, right? And Derek was trying to ride every day. I was trying to ride every day. I was about 16 years old, 17 years old. His dad would keep working through the afternoons, and I would just show up, at his house, and he'd let us get on the boat by ourselves.
Cool.
And, rip around, which was really nice.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's a ski boat, or did they have a...
No, he actually had one of the first X-Stars. So that was probably 2000.
Okay.
I think the first X-Star came out in 99, 98. One nice one with a tower was like 2000.
Gotcha.
So we were on that pretty much, from the beginning.
Cool. So the crew was pretty much you and Derek Grassman. I'm sure you had some friends here and there that would hop on the boat, but it was you guys pushing each other, really, chasing progression.
Exactly. Yeah, chasing progression. That's definitely the term that we would probably use. It was us two, pushing each other. We were the only two that were really like, doing advanced tricks.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a group of like 5 of us that, rode, but we were the two trying to progress each other's riding, go to events, travel. Once we were getting a little better, so yeah, it was pretty fun.
Okay, so what was the turning point between obviously you're progressing with Derek? When did you realize, this is something I want to take seriously? I kind of want to move up to the next level, not just riding for fun. I want to maybe move to Florida, or like when did that
Yeah.
click happen?
Yeah. So I was still in high school, probably sophomore in high school once I started getting pretty good. So I still had junior and senior year of high school basically before I can move away and join the crew in Florida,
Yeah.
which everybody wanted to do. To make it back then, you basically had to go to Florida or go to Orlando. So there was definitely a couple years where I had a chance to get into it, ride a lot here in Michigan. Me and Derek were going to like junior pro events on the pro tour, right?
Okay.
For a couple years there before I was actually able to like break off and really, pursue.
Okay. So I guess moving from Michigan to Florida, what age did you do that? And was that like, were you ever thinking about going to college, or was it just, hey, you know what, mom and dad, I'm going down to Florida and I'm going to chase, the pro wakeboard dream?
Yeah. I kind of used the whole college thing as
Okay.
a reason, to move to Florida. I moved to Orlando, went to community college in Orlando, moved down there, told them, I'm going to college, basically moved down there to go wakeboard though. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Went to a year of college down there and, wakeboarded every day.
Okay. So like, who was your contact or your connection down there? Did you move in and just find a random place to live, or?
Yeah. Good question. Chris Lasky. I don't know if anybody knows that name, but he was a wakeboarder here in Michigan and about my age. I think he was like a year older than me. He was going to move to Florida and he's like, "Hey Scott, like you want to hook up and get an apartment, like my dad's going to let me bring my boat down there like for the whole winter." And it was like no brainer, right?
Yeah.
Like let's get an apartment. And a couple of his buddies joined us, in the apartment. So we had like 4 guys, super cheap. And literally had a boat like in our backyard.
So the apartment was on a lake, or did you have the boat docked
right
somewhere?
across the street from a lake?
Okay.
Basically.
Cool.
We had a couple buddies with a house on the lake and a dock, and we were able to put like a hoist there and have the boat there.
Sweet. So what lake is this down there?
Little Lake Bryan. I think they just had a pro tour like event there.
Oh, really?
A little bit ago.
Okay.
That team won. But yeah. There's a place called Buena Vista Watersports. Shout out Buena Vista Watersports, one of my first jobs.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. What were you doing?
Renting jet skis.
Nice.
Yeah, to the Orlando tourist folk.
I'm sure that's a lot of fun.
It was awesome.
So is that were you kind of just working odds and end jobs, like stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I basically, got to go to Florida. I didn't have like a full-time job. Going to school was my main, mission to go down there, wakeboarding on the side.
Sure.
But had a little side job, but no, never really got into like full-time jobs, down there. It was more about wakeboarding.
Okay.
Right?
And so it's just you and the buddies kind of riding on Chris's boat.
Yeah.
Who's in that crew? Did Grassman move down, or is it just?
So Grassman was a couple years younger than me. So he was stuck up here in Michigan while I was, able to go down and, ride all winter. He was able to come down. So even in high school, we would go down to Orlando and like train with, coaches or whatever. Because we were trying to pursue it.
So that was in your head. You're like, was that the thought of, hey, I want to be a pro wakeboarder, I want to be on a pro tour, and I want to get paid to do this? Or was it like, this is a lot of fun, I just want to do as much of it as I can?
No, that was definitely the intention, then. I think it's obviously changed a little now. Like back then, being a pro wakeboarder was something like that everybody wanted to be, and was
it's in the X Games, it's on ESPN.
You could sustain yourself as a job being a pro wakeboarder, right? Where nowadays is it's a little tougher to do that. So, but yeah, that was the idea. I was on the junior pro tour, like just getting pretty good. Just starting. That would be like my first year doing regular pro tour.
Okay.
But
so are you sponsored at this time? Are you getting boards from people, getting clothes? Like what's?
Yeah. So yeah, I would say, I guess sponsored by, there's a Michigan rep, who did Liquid Force and a couple other like little brands, No Fear and like, No Fear. That's a name that you don't see in the wakeboard.
I'm sure a lot of people ears will perk up when they hear that.
Right. A couple others that, have since, faded, but yeah, so I got a little hookup from him. And then got in, pretty good with Liquid Force and Don Wallace and the guys there. And they were kind of like my first like board sponsor.
Okay. So are you like on the AM team basically? Are you getting paid at all? Are you going on team trips? Like, what's that look like?
Yeah. So basically, AM team getting flow on product. Back then, they would have like a bus basically taking tour. Every company had a bus, doing a tour for the summer. Stopping at different dealerships, doing clinics, whatnot. So yeah, getting to hang around with on the bus was super fun.
Yeah, I'm sure there were some pretty fun times on the Liquid Force bus back in the day.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so you're riding down there. You started riding on the pro tour. How do you get on the pro wakeboard tour? Do you just sign up and show up and go, all right?
Yeah, back then there was literally no rules to it. It was like if you think you're good enough,
Pay the entry fee.
pay the entry fee, and you're in. Nowadays, they have like a little bit of vetting, I guess, with the pro card and whatnot.
Yeah,
but
for all 8 people who want to be on the tour these
Right.
days. So what was your best podium? Or I mean, not your best podium because you might not have a podium, but what was your best finish?
Yeah, right. So junior pro stuff, like I was pretty good. I was like top 3, for a couple years at like nationals and worlds, and like sweet, and then all right in the pro ranks, and you're now up against like 40 other dudes that are like really good. And I was never like the best rider. I think I was like top 15, top 20
Yeah.
for like 10 or so events. For 2 years there roughly. And then I was like, I'm not chasing the podium. So, like it might be time to think about other things.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, good transition. So, when you first, started out on the tour, I mean, I'm sure it was a lot of fun. But did you quickly realize like these guys at the top, like the top 5, 10 riders, are on a whole different level, or were you starting to ride and be like, hey, you know what, I think I can get there. Like, keep training, keep riding. Was there a turning point? I know you've mentioned previously, but
Yeah. So no, like I said, like I was never in top 10 in pro. And they were only paying out to like spot 7 or 8 or 9 or something like that.
Okay.
So I wasn't getting paid, at that point I was like, but one thing I was really getting into was rail riding, and that there was like no real like avenue, right? There's no real events, for rail riding, except one that came along in 2011, the Carnival, which like changed it for me. That was like my first rail event. It was pretty sweet and got me like really thinking like, yeah, I want to like pursue wakeboarding, but like rail riding.
Okay. So, how long were you in Florida? I guess when did you move down there?
It's a little messy, but moved down there for like a year or two right after high school, and then went out west for a couple years, and then the East Coast kind of wake scene for 2 years, and I was then found myself back in Orlando about 2005
Okay.
until 2010.
So 2005 to 2010, would you say you're primarily riding boat?
No,
or
no.
you're
So
primarily
at that
riding rails
time-
at that point?
At that time, I was pretty much strictly riding park
Okay.
and rails.
Behind jet skis in the
Yeah,
boat, not
Yeah, behind jet skis
Okay.
in the boat. Yep.
cool.
We had our little rail park that we built out in Chiliota, which is like by Christmas, Florida.
What
and
lake was that on?
then, Lake Mills.
Okay, I
A
think I
little
remember
Lake
you talking
Mills,
about that.
And then the projects was 5-10 minutes down the road, and that's really where like it all was happening. They were pulling, they had a sick like rail park that they were pulling, behind jet skis. And
Okay, so that, I mean, I'm guessing Pat's down there.
Yep.
So what's the
Yep.
crew like?
Yep.
At the projects, and what's the vibe like? Do you show up, pay for a jet ski run, or like?
It was pretty informal.
Okay.
Yeah, Pat was there. A couple of other riders that he let, drive the jet skis would just be like, hey, it's like $20 for like however long you can ride for, basically. You show up and you got to track down somebody for a half hour to drive you. But it was awesome. Like the rails out there were sweet. They were like super advanced for the time. Yeah, it was really sweet, man. Like, and just then was when
The
like,
2 tower.
the 2 tower, right?
Okay, so you're still getting pulled behind jet skis, and then obviously there's OWC there. You're not riding OWC at all.
Yeah, definitely riding Odo.
Okay.
But that was like 45 minutes away, hour away. Projects was super
down the road.
accessible. But yeah, riding the park too.
Okay. I just wasn't sure. I mean, rail riding back then at parks and, behind the jet ski is, I guess it's come a long way, but
Yeah.
I've definitely seen videos and pictures of those rails back in the day.
Yeah.
Especially, just from the carnival recap videos and stuff.
Yeah.
So you see the two tower, what year is this? 2010, 2011?
So this has got to be 2008.
Okay.
Between 2008, 2009, they finally had a two tower at the projects. Like I specifically remember like the time they put the two tower. I don't know if anybody's ever seen this, but they put the two tower over 100-foot flat bar, like directly over the rail. And at that time, you could only hit rails off to the side, like a jet ski, right? Like you have to cut out to the side. And having the cable like directly over the rail was just like
game changer.
Incredible, right? Like incredible feeling like you've never felt before. Like you could stay on the rail so easy, like I don't know. It was just awesome.
So this has got to be one of the first two tower systems out there.
I think it was the first demo like two tower system.
Okay, do you know how it landed there? Was it through Pat? Pat's like, hey, I want to get a two tower.
So it was through Pat. He was like the Sesitec, like guy at that point. Nobody else was, doing that stuff. And Sesitec was just coming out with that two tower. And I think he had like the one demo there. So I was able to ride it for like a year or so. And this whole time I'm like, this is it for me. Like I need to have one of these.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's when it like all started coming to.
So did your mind immediately go to, I'm going to open up a cable, a two tower cable and run it as a business? Or you're like, I'm going to figure out a way to just have one of these in my backyard?
Initially, it was like, I just want one.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but I want one. This is sweet. It was kind of like an ironic, crazy, weird situation where I got hurt at an event. Like I was riding.
Okay,
at an event.
let's talk about that because you messed yourself up pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. I messed myself up pretty decent. Broke my back on like the Step Up Productions two pool.
So this is like a winch event, or
winch event. It was epic event in Grand Rapids. Like I flew up to like be in it. It was in my hometown.
Yeah.
I was so stoked to, like ride in it. It was awesome. And probably one of the best Step Up Productions, pool to pool events out there.
This is in front of the Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really cool event. Anyhow, like all my friends are there, right? And just broke myself off. Like broke my back. Had to fly back to Florida.
Like reverse taco, landed on your back.
Exactly. Yep,
okay.
Yep. Slipped out, on the transfer up and just back tacoed and game over.
Did you go right to the hospital afterwards?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And what was the diagnosis?
Fractured spine.
Yikes.
Broke off two of the little processors things, that stick out from your spine, and they're just like floating around in there. They can't do surgery. They're just like, all right, you'll heal.
So that was it. There's nothing they can do.
Right.
I mean, immobilize it?
Yep.
Is that what they said?
Yeah, just stay still for as long as possible and start physical therapy as soon as you can.
Jeez.
So I went back to Florida, super bummed, right? But it actually turned out to be like a blessing in disguise. I got to sit down and actually think about like where my life is going right now, right? Like what's next. So it was actually like, all right, I got a year here basically where I can't wakeboard.
Yeah.
So I put together, a little business plan to move back up to Florida in my hometown and
Michigan.
Michigan, start a little two tower.
So would you say before you broke your back, you didn't have, not in a bad way, you didn't have like a direction that you were headed at all? I mean,
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I was like coaching on the side, doing little side gigs, to make money. But yeah, it definitely was like a eye-opening point in my life where I was like, if I want to like keep doing something in this industry, like I need to make it happen like soon.
Yeah.
And the fact that the two tower was there, like just available for like purchase, it all fell into place.
So you're in Florida, probably pretty bummed, but you almost have a spark within you that this two tower system, I can open up my own business. What's that business plan look like? What, like as you're drawing it up, what's that look like?
Yeah. Well, first is finding a location, a lake. I found, ironically, like a development that had a grand plan to build like these ski lakes called Placid Waters, and there were no houses there, but the lakes were there. So I kind of just made a agreement with the dude. Hey, let me come in, start a little business here. I'll bring, people that are into water sports into your area. He let me, go in there for, I don't think it was 6 years. But what helped out was knowing the guys at Action Water Sports. That's what really sped this whole process along. So I knew Jerry, who's the owner of Action Water Sports in Grand Rapids here. Hit him up, was like, hey, partner with me basically to, start this little business. So he helped out a little, family helped out a little, and we just made it happen. We did a little pro shop over there, sold some gear, but yeah, it was like a really, really sweet setup.
So you're working with the guy who has Placid Waters. Is he charging you for the land? Are you paying a lease, or is it kind of like an agreement that you're going to bring people in and he's going to let you do your thing because he's not building houses at that point yet?
Right, exactly. Free lease. The idea was like just bring water sports enthusiasts to his community. But yeah, it was kind of like the wild, wild west of what we were able to do out there. It was pretty fun,
Cool. Okay. So you have a pro shop. Is that kind of Action's involvement? They're like, hey, we want a pro shop here. We want to throw a bunch of gear in and have our name on it. Since there's no other public wake parks in Michigan at the time.
Correct. Yeah. We were definitely the first one. We were, I want to say either like the second or third 2-tower actual like business. There's only one that I could like look up, which was Nordic Wake Park.
Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, in Wisconsin. If anybody's ever heard of it.
Logan Vandenheuvel used to ride there, right?
Yeah. They were like the only one. So I think we had like the third or fourth 2-tower system, built.
Okay, so when you're buying it from Sesitec, are they giving you any tips and pointers about, hey, we've obviously they haven't seen businesses, but are they helping you out at all when it comes to like starting the business up, or is it pretty?
They didn't really know much either.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're just like, yeah, like this one other place, put it up at the bottom of their ski hill, and is charging people to come ride. Sounds like a great idea. You should do it. That was all I needed. Right. Like I was like, all right, yeah, let's go. And it all worked out. Like it was great. Like we just, came up with pricing and had a sweet little pro shop, and yeah, it turned out to be like the epicenter of like the Midwest, like for wakeboarders.
Yeah, it definitely had a big name. I mean, still to this day, I feel like you hear people talking about Placid, at least here. They're like, oh, I used to ride at Placid back in the day, blah, blah, blah. It's
Yeah,
like,
shocks me.
Been a while since that,
Yeah.
Then. But so you got the 2-tower. I guess we can kind of dive into the people that were riding there at the time, the Michigan scene, like you were kind of alluding to there. Who were some of the people that were coming through, on a regular basis?
Yeah. You said like Logan Vandenheuvel. He's a longtime, friend, and started riding there right at the beginning. Ryan Besmick. Some of you guys might know his name.
He's ride for Humanoid, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Humanoid. Dude. Who else? We had tons of like connections, or I did, I guess, with pros and other people in the industry. So it seemed like every weekend we had like another pro or somebody coming through, which was like definitely like fueling it all and like making it seem like, oh, this place is pretty legit.
Yeah.
But yeah, tons of local dudes. Like the scene here, like I think anybody would be surprised like seeing what it actually was.
Okay. And would you say the 2-tower was a profitable venture throughout its entirety, or were there, times when it wasn't, or times when it definitely was?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, like all businesses, right, start off a little slow. You get your name out there, get it going. But yeah, we were I was never in it to be rich. Obviously, like nobody gets into
if you're into
be rich, but it was profitable, like minimally profitable, I would say.
Okay. I mean, breaking even at the very least.
Doable, where we could pay our buddies to operate it, and I could operate it, and that's also when I like started working at Action.
So you were working at Action as well as running the 2-tower.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
What were you doing at Action? Like simultaneously
delivering boats, driving boats around. It was like a super easy transition. So I got up here, started, the whole Placid Wake Park thing, went through the summer. And if anybody like Michigan is like super seasonal. You get done with summer and it's freezing, And so I was like, maybe I need a job.
So is
And
this a way to kind of have a consistent full-time year-round
yeah,
employment?
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And I had known Jerry, like I said, teamed up with him on this. He was actually like one of my first wakeboard sponsors, like
Yeah,
Action
when you were like
Watersports when I was
16 or 17, right? Or
exactly
even probably
right.
younger than that.
So I knew him really well. But yeah, it was just like super good.
Okay. So we're sitting at a full size right now. I can see it out the window. Cameras can't see it, but was that always in the back of your mind when you first started the 2 tower? Was that in the back of your mind, or did it take a little bit of time to like transition to saying, "Hey, I want to go full size"?
Exactly. No, it was not the idea right off the bat. Like I never thought like having a full size park was even attainable. Like,
Really?
you'd always hear like, oh, like millions of dollars, to do a full size park. And the 2 tower was like, you could put this thing up for, $70,000.
Is that around what do you think it
Roughly, I
costs you?
think the whole investment, right?
Okay.
For the building, the cable, like everything, right? Full size is just like so much. But a year or two into it, once and then I started working back at Action and getting in, back with the crew there, and talking with, the owner of Action, it kind of became a possibility, right? Like he started seeing the value in what we had going over
Jerry,
at
that
Placid.
is?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And thinking, well, they got a great thing going, there. Maybe we invest in, do a full size. And that's when we had the conversation. Hey, like if you find a spot, I'll stop, doing Placid and run, Action.
So what year do you think that happened when you're talking with the crew here at Action and you're still running
I think
Placid?
discussions started in 2014.
And when did Placid open?
And Placid opened in 2010. So
Okay.
it was 3 or 4 years, of running that, getting it going, and
Definitely
getting the
proof of
scene.
concept there to
Yeah.
to see if that's something that would be sustainable. So 2014, the conversation starts about building the full size. It's a lot. To it's a it's a big bite of cable that you're taking off to chew. What's the first step?
Well, our first step was go talk with Pat. I had known Pat, obviously had a relationship with him, through buying the 2.0 and working with him, and B-Doll was the other dude back then. So we just started a discussion, like, we have possibility of this land or this land. And the spot that we're at now, where the cable's actually at, we never even thought it was possible to, put a full size in where we're at right now, until we really started digging into it and doing some research.
So why didn't you think it was possible at its current location?
Our current location where we're at is super small. If you've ever been to Action Wake Park or seen it, it's like one of the tightest cables you'll ever ride.
Yeah.
Super quick, stretches. You're moving, you're doing stuff the whole time. And yeah, just the constraints of the property were, like it took us a while to.
Well, and I'm sure you went and visited a handful of full sizes before, I don't know, with Jerry or Kevin or whoever.
Yep.
To kind of see, and what cables did you go to and what were kind of key takeaways there from visiting those?
Right. So this is, 2014. There's Wake Nation, Cincinnati, OW, McCormick's.
Did you go to BSR at all?
Yeah, BSR was just, starting there.
Okay.
TSR was around, but there's only a handful of full sizes in the country at that time.
Yeah, still not that many. But
Right.
yeah.
And I think we were only like the second, like Sesitec, full size.
Who was
at
the
that
first?
time.
Who was the first?
I think Hexagon had one.
Oh, yeah.
at that
Check
time.
out.
Yeah.
RIP.
But RIP Hexagon. Yeah. But yeah, so and then right after us came West Rock and the quarry in Illinois there.
So what were the other properties you were looking at? Was it, in the Grand Rapids area?
Well, we wanted obviously something right next to the dealership.
Yeah.
The dealership, Action Watersports, had been, locked in this location for like 20 years. But the discussion was, like, do we move the dealership to find a piece of property that
Really? So that was a serious consideration.
Yeah,
of
we
picking
drove
up.
around and put stakes in dirt and tested it all, and all
Wow.
around
So
town.
that was a serious consideration of
Yeah,
picking
yeah.
up and moving the entire dealership
Yeah.
to make the wake park.
That's how much value I think like Jerry saw in it, which was like awesome, to feel that way. Like,
Yeah, and I think it would, I guess if you're going to build a full size cable, it's a huge endeavor. So you want to have your dealership right
Yeah.
next to it. I mean, it would be kind of
Exactly.
wild not to.
Yeah.
So it definitely makes sense. So when did you lock in this location?
I think it was like early 2015 or maybe even late 2014. It took about a year to like lock it all in.
Okay, and then after that, is the lake already dug? Is there a
There's
pond here?
little tiny pond. We brought in the excavators and drained the whole thing, reshaped the whole thing. If you ever seen the park, it's got a nice island in the middle. Yeah, but it's small. But we did tons of dirt work, shaped the whole lake, how we wanted it. It was quite
So
an
did you,
endeavor.
at that point, you're working with the city or the township? Are there any hurdles you run into with them or any struggles you have?
Absolutely. We have a stream that kind of goes all the way around our entire park. I don't know if anybody's ever dealt with trying to like move a stream, but
Sounds impossible.
There's a lot of hurdles you got to jump through to, move things like that. And
Because you're probably dealing with the DNR at that point.
yeah, DNR,
They don't want you
DQ,
touching
and
that
all
stuff.
the other, 3-letter acronyms, that are out there.
So was it a lot of back and forth when you're saying, "Hey, we want to dig a wake park here," and they're like, "Well, you can only dig here."
Yeah, it was a little back and forth. It was really like, hey, we can do it for this much, money, right? Like,
They're charging you.
yeah,
Okay.
like, we can do it. It's not going to be like the cheapest, but that was the investment we committed to making off the bat. And like you see our park now, it's like probably one of the better looking parks out there. It's like super high class. I feel like you'd say, right?
It's
Maybe.
really nice. Really, really nice.
But-
Yeah. So you're digging the lake. What other planning steps are happening at this time? Are you immediately working with Sesitec because you knew Pat in the past, and is that kind of why you went that venture as opposed
is.
to Rickson? Or
Yeah, it is. We had already had a relationship working with him, which was really easy, to just continue.
Yeah.
The dealership at Action works like heavily with Liquid Force, Hyperlight, and Ronix. Those 3 brands. So got buy-in from them, got buy-in from Mastercraft, and
So they're paying money.
sure, yeah, and they're sponsoring, right? The
Okay,
park.
so we don't have to get into dollars amounts, but
Right,
is it
right.
is it a significant chunk of money that those companies?
I mean, it
are,
definitely helps.
Yeah.
It definitely helps our operation.
and is that a yearly
right? Yeah, so it's
re-up?
Yeah,
whatever.
Yep.
Okay.
As long as we're making the value there for them, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you're working with Sesitec. Are they, obviously you're showing them the land, as you immediately found it, and are they like, we can squeeze a cable in here, or,
Right. That's exactly right. They're like,
Squeeze.
well, we think we can get one in there, right? Threw us a couple drawings, and yeah, we're like, well, looks good to us, like if you say it's good, let's go.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, it's gonna be tight, but
this is probably the smallest one they had built at that time?
I think it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Roughly. I think the bricks is a little smaller.
is it really?
I think it is just a little.
Probably a different designed layout though?
It is. Yeah. Yep.
Because we kind of got a
Theirs is like,
awkward triangle type situation
we sure
here.
do.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we can kind of think about, in hindsight right now, if you knew what you know now and you went back to do that process of, digging the lake, clearing it out and putting the towers up or designing the cable, what would you do differently?
Honestly, not a ton.
Yeah.
Like, I ride other parks and I come back to ride here and it's one of the best riding parks. I feel like, maybe I'm a partial, right?
No bias there though, right?
But no, I think it's an awesome park to ride. And no, looking back at it, I don't think we do anything, different. With what we had to work with, I think we definitely did the best we could.
Cool. Yeah, it's a killer park. I would recommend anyone who's in the area at any point to come in and ride it. It's tight, but that's something that I enjoy. I think you go and ride bigger parks, really big parks like the quarry, or places that have kind of a lot of dead area, and you fall on the far side. There's definitely a lot of drawbacks to a big park. In a tight park, yeah, you do have some drawbacks. You don't have as much room to put features. Corners come a lot quicker. But I think the benefits kind of outweigh the negatives for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Glad we agree on that. What were I don't know if I want to jump into starting operating yet. I mean, I think we should probably dive into building it. Not a whole lot of people have built the full size cable in the world.
Yeah.
I guess we can just start from square one. Like, what does that look like when so the lake's dug, filled with water, they ship the towers and everything over, and then
So actually, at that point, like the lake wasn't filled up yet; it was still pretty empty.
was that by design to?
Uh, well, we had to drain the whole lake to shape it, and
Yeah.
it was just taking like a while to refill it back up. You
Okay.
know, basically rainwater, and we kind of diverted that little stream, into it a little bit. But yeah, it was taking a minute. So at install point, like there was hardly any water even in the park, in the lake, which made install a little.
I was gonna say, does that
challenging.
make it more difficult or easier that it's not fully
A little
filled
more
yet,
difficult? I think you like a little deeper water,
just in case you
to
fall
set
off the tower?
Yeah, that's definitely a reason.
What are the other ones?
Like setting towers. It's easier to set a tower when you have deeper water. So we had to bring in us like a little special like barred crane that we were able to use. At that time, it was like you either get a big crane and set your tower or a helicopter, right? Like,
Helicopter.
so
Okay.
it was a little like, there was challenges, and luckily like we have awesome resources, here, and we were able to make it happen, no problem. But yeah, it was a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, 100%. So, how long would you say from, I would guess Sam showed up with everything here, and did he bring anyone with him?
Yeah. Sam brought Kyle McCutcheon. Shout out Kyle. What's up, man? Those two knocked out the park like from start to finish. I bet it was like mid-August, and they finished like end of September.
Okay.
So a good couple months,
Yeah.
of hard work. They were in town. Yeah, it was pretty sweet though. They knocked it out pretty fast.
So did they have a later start than you had initially planned when you were planning on opening the wake park?
Don't
Because
re-
I thought that I had heard that you guys had maybe planned on opening late fall or late summer of
Okay, yeah.
2015.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
We actually so it was September 2015. We were hoping, we'd maybe get it installed by August and be able to run some laps,
Yeah.
before the year was over. But it ended up being, like late September, and we basically took our first lap and winterized it.
Yeah. Right. Ride around a couple times,
Right.
and call it.
Right.
So you got the cable up and you're kind of ready to spin. What's the building situation like? Because I know some cables have a really nice pro shop. Like Elevated has a really nice big building pro shop and a restaurant. I think maybe coming, or maybe there already is one on top. And Action is kind of similar. A really nice pro shop. Is that part of Jerry's plan, I guess? And what's like the building of this whole thing like? Compared to building the cable.
Sure. Well, if anybody knows Action Watersports, we don't do anything, half-assed. It's like sweet, awesome, top notch, or not at all. And that's the way like Jerry looks at everything. So when he was like, we're going to build a cable park, it's going to be like the nicest looking cable park ever.
Yeah.
Right. Anyone's ever seen. Like, this is going to be like the greenest grass you'll ever see at a cable park. So the same thing.
And it is. It is the greenest grass you'll ever see at a cable park.
You should see that watering bill. But the building itself, right, is like, he's like, it's the same thing. It's going to match our dealership.
Yep.
It's going to, fall in line with all of, the way we want things to look. Right. So yeah, the shop here, we have a little kitchen in the shop. We have a little pro shop area or rental area in the shop, pro shop area. But yeah, the shop is really nice. Big patio,
If you were to, maybe you have the same answer you did with the cable, and if you were to go back in time and learn what you did now, would you change anything about the building or anything, designing or layout wise?
I think there'd be one thing that I would change, and the only thing that would be putting the rental area
I think
in a
had a feeling you were
separate
gonna say
little
that.
area down by the lake. It's super accessible where you can only need one person to like do tickets and rental gear, but yeah, having all the rental gear outside would
In
be
a
sweet.
separate area.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be, if hindsight 2020, obviously in a perfect world, that's what you would do. You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
But other than that, yeah, it's a pretty awesome, badass setup. You went with all unit. I asked Dan this, and it's maybe a pretty easy answer, but why'd you decide to go with unit, and why'd you decide to go with the rails you went with? What was that planning process?
Yeah, awesome question, right? Like unit at that time, unit was pretty much, I think, the only like legit feature company out there. It went along with the aesthetics that Jerry was after, right? Or we were all after. The nice white looking features, not your in the past, homemade, wooden nails sticking out everywhere. That's how we did it over at Placid, which was awesome. But you're checking screws, screws are popping up, breaking boards, and just that wasn't, the vibe we were trying to go for.
Yeah.
So that investment was always part of the plan. The features we chose, yeah, you'll probably look at our park and be like, they don't have like, super advanced features. Well, you're right. Like we don't. Our area that we're in, is not like a pro riding, riders area. The majority of customers we have coming through our park are never done it before, right? But I think we did a pretty decent job choosing features that are super hackable, and an awesome variety. And, we just added a couple more in the last year or two. So,
yeah, I don't mean to beat a dead horse on this question, but I feel like this one might have a little bit different of an answer. If you were to go back in time before you bought the features, knowing what you know now,
sure.
What would you change?
Yeah, I would probably get a little more aggressive in the feature selection, I guess. Yeah,
would you go with more?
Definitely get a little more aggressive. In
a little bit leaning more rounded top features. I know that's definitely a topic of discussion.
Yes, that's obviously desired now, but in 2014, when we were ordering, I don't even think they offered like a rounded top,
other than like unit pipes and like
other than the pipe
rails and stuff.
Right.
Okay,
but yeah, that would have been great.
Yeah, that would be my biggest recommendation. I feel like the parks that are opening is
I agree.
Get a few, at most maybe, features that have a flat top. But other than that, I don't think a rounded top makes it much more difficult. I honestly think it hurts less for the most part when you fall on something with a rounded top.
Absolutely.
And it gives you way more options when you're riding because you can put pressure on your toes or your heels and change kind of your direction and jumping off.
Well, it opens doors for hacking too.
100%.
I mean, it's hard to jump to the side off of a flat top rail.
Yeah, you have to get like on the chisel of it.
Right.
And that, I don't know. It's cool, but yeah. I think that's a, if you're thinking about opening a park and you're listening to this, first off, wow, sweet. Second off, I would definitely recommend going with more rounded top features.
Yeah.
So
unit, if you want to add like an add-on, like rounded top for all of our flat top features, that'd be sweet.
Do they have? Do they?
I don't think
they don't.
Yet.
Okay.
Maybe.
I know they have a few add-ons and whatnot, but that would be definitely something that'd be sweet. So you not opened the cable, but you started running in 2015. Took a couple laps, did a method off the kicker. I think I saw that.
Yeah.
Attaboy. Winterize it. So you summarize it then in 2016. Run me through opening the cable.
Hitting the ground running, right? By that time, like our massive dealership has been marketing and advertising that this is going to open for like 2 years, and by now. So the pent up excitement was there, definitely. And we did a couple like, we do this, liquid force free for all basically, event where everything's free. I think at the end of that first year, we had like 2,500 new riders, and that was just like, way more than we actually thought
really
was going to
happen.
happen.
Did you do any estimations of like, this would be an ideal season for us?
Yeah, sure. But yeah, to see like that first year and the second year and like how many people really came through was like pretty exciting.
Sweet. So you said you hit the ground running. What was, the first month opening like? Were there some issues you ran into, or?
Yeah, there was obviously like a couple issues, that were going on with dialing in the cable, operation, I guess you'd say. It was still pretty fresh, and like working out the kinks of that was a little bit of a struggle, but for the most part, like running a cable park, we had been doing that for 6 years already. So, having the idea of like what kind of experience you need to give to the customer, like we already had that in mind. Coaching stuff, like obviously that's been my background. Like I got that, right? I can get people off the dock and coach everybody on how to do that. The size of things and scale of everything was a little different, but I felt like we were cruising. Like,
Okay.
it wasn't that challenging.
Yeah, I would
feel
say
like.
probably the first major issue would be, the cable operating, at a high level. It didn't start out that way,
Right.
if I'm correct.
I think it went really well though, basically because you were an employee that first year.
Yeah, because I was pulling ropes in the bucket as it was dropping 8 out of every 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that would probably be the only would that be one of the biggest issues you had that year?
Was, yeah. Getting ball ropes to drop in the magazine was like our biggest issue that first little bit.
Yeah, and I don't think I was here for the remedy of that. What has been done since to fix that?
I think like it got to a point where it completely like broke off the magazine guide bars, and we had to take it down and just weld it all up, and we just kind of refabbed it.
After watching the ball ropes go through, you're like, okay, this is probably what needs to happen as opposed to what it looked like before.
And watching it happen for a year, you kind of understand, how this whole you're sitting on that cable tower, 5 hours a day, trying to figure stuff out. You figure it out.
Yeah. At some point you're going to figure it out.
Right.
Yeah, I guess talking to Josh Potter, he was here a little bit ago. I think I remember him saying he's installed a ton of cables. He says installing a used cable more often than not runs a lot smoother off the bat than a fresh one does. And he said that because I think he says the metal figures out how to work together.
Yeah.
Which maybe sounds like some voodoo BS, but like, I don't know.
But it seems to be.
It seems to be the case. I would imagine that in the past few years here, it's been running a lot more smoothly now that everything's kind of settled. And
I would agree. It's kind of found its sweet spot. And I always looked at like ODub, who'd been around for like, 15 years at the point, 20 years, right? And it's just like, everything's just so smooth and just like ting, 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 operates so well. But yeah, I feel like we're at that point now. You find your groove.
Yeah. So you transition from the 2-tower to the full size, with action being a huge factor in that. What role do you place on them, or the importance of their role in the full size cable? So, basically, what does a boat dealership stand to benefit by building a full size cable in its backyard?
I think that's a great question. That is the best question right there. What does a boat dealership stand to gain, right?
Yeah.
And I think everyone's asking that. Well, Action looks at it like this. We get 3,000 to 4,000 new water sports people through this park, learning how to wakeboard, kneeboard, whatever it is, right? And probably those people coming through the park are going to be like 15 to 25 years old, right? Either using their parents' money or what little money they got. Well, if you can lock in your brand or your name with those people, right? 10 years down the line, when those people graduate college and get good jobs and have money to buy boats, who do you think they're going to look for? The dealer, Podunk dealership down the road, or this place that they grew up riding at. And that's the way we look at it, is if you can lock in your name and your brand with people, it's people are brand loyal.
That's a hell of a customer acquisition cost. Yeah,
it is.
But it's got some sound logic behind it. Would you say that's kind of the main driving factor of the cable? Is
absolutely. I mean, like business wise, yes, for the dealership, lock in those people, and we've gotten tons of boat sales, off this. Like people get into it, and their family, has a place on water, and it's just a natural thing to get a boat.
Yeah, and I think you get, the goal is to get, at least in my mind, I want to get as many people skipping across the water on their wakeboard as possible. This is one of the easiest, if not the easiest way to do it.
I would agree.
So if you can get them skipping across the water here, who knows down the line what can happen, in their life or their uncle or aunt's life or whatever, if they need to buy a boat. or want to buy a boat, now they've been exposed to it. Because without being exposed to it, you're not going to know that it's something you want to do.
Exactly. So that's always like a sweet benefit. But, for me, it was always like, let's get as many people into water sports and wakeboarding like as possible.
Yeah.
And like, it's also going to do this. That's awesome too.
Yeah. Get two birds stoned at once.
Right.
That's perfect. I think that was a good point there. It's been open since 2016. How do you think the culture of, the riders here and the culture of just Action Wake Park has changed, since opening, and now it's what, 7 years?
Yeah.
Or in the 7th year?
Yeah.
6th year? What are we at? 16,
going
17.
into 6th year,
7th
7th year.
7th year?
Yeah.
All right. 7th year.
Let's go with 7.
We'll go with 7. It's a lucky
um,
number.
yeah, the culture, how it's like changed. I would say, you can kind of look at, I think, how wakeboarding is like perceived, to the younger generation now. Is it always used to be like contests, who can be the best, who's, the winner, right? And now I think like those questions aren't even asked anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, how unique can I ride? How much fun can I have? And, like, what unique trick can I do, or what can I do to make this trick that everybody else does look different? And I think that's what makes people feel like they've won, not like they win a contest.
Yeah. They kind of impress their friends, or even have fun doing weird, unique, different shit on their board. What would you say the goal of the culture of the wake park was opening? Action's kind of catchphrase is bringing families together.
That's Action Water Sports, the dealerships.
Yeah.
Like their mission statement basically is bringing families together. We do that obviously selling boats and get people, on the water with boats, but it's the same thing here at the park. Like, you see families, come together here, right? Like they hang out, mom's getting into it, dad's getting into it, the kids are obviously into it. It's something everybody can do. And yeah, the atmosphere like here is like super, encouraging, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
Which is, we're super inclusive. Like, that's been like our motto since day one, right? Like, our industry is so small, there's no room for exclusivity. Like, we want as many people like, in this as possible, and we're going to be like as stoked to help you out as possible.
Yeah.
To keep you in it.
So what have been some key learning moments? I know you're not as involved with the wake park anymore, but I know we're going to still keep talking about this because it's been a huge part of I feel like your life. Still is, but what have been some key learning moments the past 7 years of being involved in the operations of a wake park?
Man, that's also a good question. Man,
Yeah, that's a loaded one.
That is loaded. I might have to think about that for a minute. But shoot, Hunter, I don't know. You might have to give me a minute.
Yeah, no worries. We'll circle back to that one.
There you go. That's good. Yeah, move
on. This one will be, you can probably have a little bit more to say on it. What's the difficulty for you keeping core riders happy with changing layouts and having the rails, or I guess, getting a new rail or whatever, while still balancing that, family friendly and beginner, riding environment?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing, at least for me, was the layout, right? Like, that's one thing. No, we don't have the most advanced, features, but one thing you can do to keep people coming back and keep people like super excited is the layout and switching it up as much as possible.
Yeah.
And that was one thing, like, growing up, riding at OW and McCormick's, like, those are the two parks I basically rode at, when I was in Florida. Never switched anything up. It would be a year. You'd go a year and, it'd still be the same layout. So when I had the opportunity to, switch it up myself, hey,
like, untie these anchors.
It's literally happening like every week. My goal is to have a rider come back a week later and at least one thing different.
Yeah. So why do you think, when you were there, I mean, I don't know if they change it up a lot nowadays down south, but why do you think that wasn't something that was of primary concern? Or on the other side of that, I guess, why do things get moved around here so much?
Sure. I think I just put a big emphasis on it.
Yeah.
Both like me personally, and like I try to share that with all our employees. Like, hey, this is super important. This is one thing that we can do. I don't think in the past, I don't think it was as easy. Like
You're not going to move Nessie around.
No, right? Like
She's not going anywhere.
moving that stuff around is very difficult. Anchors are, in the past, I feel like are massive, super hard to move. So in like setting up our anchor system and our features, like we tried to make it, maneuverable where we can shift stuff around.
Yeah.
Which helps a lot. Right?
So you think? I mean, I would say that's important. I think kind of instilling in the culture, like we were talking about earlier, of the employees who work here to want to move stuff around and hire people who want to ride, so they want to move stuff around and they want to give people a good experience on the water.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I feel like that's where the culture begins here, and people look at our park like, oh man, like they keep it fresh,
Yeah,
for sure.
Which is interesting, excuse me, because this is the only wake park within driving distance for pretty much everyone in Michigan, or more or less. So you really don't have a ton of competition, so to speak, in the area. So there's really no, I mean, I'm not going to say there's no reason to. There is a huge reason to, but I think in a lot of business owners' eyes, you could say, I'm the only cable within a 3-hour radius. I don't need to change my setup at all. That's not, where my employee dollars are worth being spent,
Yeah. For me, like, it was never about that, right? It's always about like providing the dopest park, like for the riders. Being a rider and having like those experiences, you're like, you go back to the park and you're paying, like whatever it is, 40, 50, 60 bucks, to go ride. And you're like, man, this is the same thing I rode last week and the week before and last year.
Yeah.
Like once you've experienced going back to a park and having like something different is awesome. And then on the other side, you progress so much faster when you're able to like try, different things and different setups. So I feel like it's made our progression of the riders here like way faster.
Yeah,
way
I would totally agree with that. So I guess we can kind of, going forward, are there any plans of changing the current setup here, not of the cable itself, but of the property itself?
Sure. I mean, every year we have a pretty decently large piece of land where we're at, with constraints, right? We have a highway, that runs on one side of us and a stream on the other side. But we put in a disc golf course last year, which is super fun. We still kick around ideas of adding another small lake, and what the possibilities of that look like.
Yeah.
Whether it's a bi-level, 2-tower, or full size, or what is desired, basically. Like both by the rider and just the general public. As a nice public park to be at.
Has an aqua park ever been in the discussion?
Yeah, I think it's been in the discussion every single year.
Because I would share the financial side of it. A lot of people would probably like to see, something that's a cash cow, so to speak, making quite a bit of money.
Yep, that's it. That's exactly what comes up, every year. And the conversation that comes directly after that is we do wakeboarding, like, and we want to pursue and like promote wakeboarding, and we do what we're good at. And to add an aqua park, yeah, it would probably make us a little more money.
Interesting.
But is it doing anything for our wakeboard community?
Is it a tacky add-on to help the bottom line? Is that kind of
right? If it's just to help the bottom line, that's not the goal.
Yeah.
We want to provide the coolest spot for the people that are into what this is.
Yeah, 100%. Interesting. So, are there any plans going forward of building cables anywhere else in the state of Michigan, or I know there's a dealership in Florida that Action owns.
Yeah.
Is that been in the talks?
I mean, without saying crazy too much, like, yes, it's been in the talks. There's
a lot of talking going on over there.
There's been opportunities that have been passed up, but there's definitely been opportunities that are on the horizon that are being looked at. I'd love to see one on the east side of Michigan.
I was gonna say
Detroit area. It's definitely a bigger area than us on the west side here, and we crush it here on the west side. And they definitely would if they did on the east side. We have a dealership on the east side of the state as well.
Yeah. So if there was to be an expansion, do you think that the east side would kind of be one of the most prime candidates for another wake park in Michigan?
I would definitely say yeah.
I would say either there or the Traverse City area I think potentially could see a successful park up there, given that there's a dealership up there as well.
Right.
So
I
interesting.
agree.
Yeah, I think it'd be really cool, and I think it's a matter of time until it happens in the Detroit area. So I would imagine that if it's gonna happen, you'd probably want to be,
Yeah.
Action would want to be a part of it.
That's what I keep saying.
All right, so let's leave the wake park for a little bit. When did you transition your time from being full time at the wake park, at least in the on season, to kind of more of what you're doing now at Action Water Sports?
Right. So I guess it'd be about 2 years ago, right before like COVID hit.
Okay, 2019.
Yep. Dakota, our boy who is working here at the park.
He's going for a walk right now.
He's taking a hike.
He's really literally across the Appalachian Trail.
So he was an employee like first year or second year, I think, and crushed it as an employee. And I think it was like the year after, we brought him in as like manager, and yeah, he's been like crushing the manager role for a couple years now. Where I've kind of stepped away a little bit, obviously, like kind of still overseeing things, but so I run like the pro shop up at the dealership, and our like on water lessons up there, and some other things, right? But yeah, you'll never take me away from the park.
You could take Scott away from the park, but you can't take the park out of Scott.
That's right.
That's what I'm hearing. Okay, so you're running the pro shop now. Is that long term for you? Is that something you want to do?
Nothing is
Set in stone.
Set in stone final. I think that's true with most people, but just being involved in Action's organization is unique, I feel like, and if it's unlike most other organizations, companies out there to work for. So I see myself definitely staying with the organization in one role or another.
Staying with the organization here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about family. So when you were in Florida, were you single, for the majority of that time?
Yeah.
Basically, when did you meet Deanna is kind of what I'm...
Yeah, right. My wife, Deanna, knew her in high school, never clicked.
Why is that?
I think she hated me. I'm not sure. Just, never clicked. She was a couple years younger than me, but still like kind of hung out in the same like circle of friends. Like we said, like I moved away for like, 10 years or so, moved back to town to, hook up the whole Placid thing, and reconnected with her. Dated there for only like a year, got engaged, and we were like, sailing, married now. And
so she was helping you run Placid.
Oh
at
yeah.
the time?
Yeah. She like basically started Placid with me.
Okay.
Ran it all with me.
And helped with the transition.
Was definitely there since the beginning of all the cable park stuff.
Yeah, and helped with the transition to the full size as
well.
well.
Yeah. So she kind of came in, ran Action with me for the first couple years before she moved on to other things, right? In the dealership, she's still with us here. So, but yeah, huge help by Deanna. Shout out Deanna.
So you have a kid now?
I do. We do.
Not me and you.
No. Me
you and your wife.
Yeah, we do.
Nash.
Yeah.
How old is he?
He's just over 2 years.
Okay. So how has that kind of changed your life? I mean, would you say you were pushing your wakeboarding really, really hard until you broke your back, and that kind of changed your perspective on how hard you push your wakeboarding, or did that not really change that?
Yeah, I'd say somewhat. I mean, I was pushing it pretty good there.
Yeah.
At least in my mind. But after that, it was more like, all right, let's like do something career-wise that I can stay in the wakeboarding industry.
Yeah.
And that's pretty rare, I feel like, these days. Like, not many people are, wakeboarding as a kid and, in the industry
Still
now,
involved.
Like, still involved, right? There's
On
limited
behind-the-scenes
spaces
things,
in this industry, right? Like,
yeah.
So I feel fortunate to be able to, like, be where I'm at.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. So I was just kind of leading into, I feel like, you're a pro rider and you're riding super hard, pushing it, with whatever sport it may be, and you have a kid, and I feel like your perspective definitely changes a little bit in terms of, I'm going to get hurt out here. I have a kid now.
You definitely have to think about it, or I was thinking about it a little bit.
Yeah.
For sure. I remember like a day you're like, all right, we got to get this trick, right? Don't wuss out. I'm like, well, I don't want to die. I have a kid now, right? Like
Life insurance policy is only so big, you know?
Right. So it's definitely in the back of your mind, you know, when you're obviously doing stuff. But
Yeah.
when you're out there wakeboarding, I think everybody knows like who rides. It's like, you know, everything goes out the window when you're out there
Yeah,
riding.
it's the best form of therapy. Just
Right.
kind of shuts your mind off.
Right.
You plan on getting him into wakeboarding at all?
Yeah, I would say yes. But
If he wants?
who wants to be that dad who's like, you have to, you know, do this?
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to expose him to it and let him see what happens.
Yeah.
But
Is that your kind of philosophy, though, is expose him to everything and see what sticks? Obviously, you're going to have a little bit more passion when it comes to teaching him wakeboarding.
absolutely.
So there's a higher chance of it is sticking, but that's
Yeah, and I think, you know, he'll see me do it and probably want to get down to. So
love it. He's probably old enough to go around the cable now.
I think
in
this is
between
his
your
year.
legs.
Yeah, I
with
think
the-
this is his year.
You got a life jacket for him?
Absolutely.
All right, love to see it. All right, I think we can kind of wrap this thing up here. I know you took the time out of your day after work here to join me, which is much appreciated. He's a family man now, father one. But anything else you'd like to add? You know, before we wrap this up? Or
No,
think?
I mean, I think I just wanted to say thank you, you know, for what you've been doing for our industry. Yeah, I bet you didn't see that coming.
No, appreciate it.
Over the past years, like I don't know, you've been pushing the industry to a place where I've always wanted to see it go, in like a way that's, you know, a little abrupt, but I think is necessary, which is great. So shout out to you for doing that, because yeah, you know, as a rail rider, you don't want to see, you know, sloppy riding. I don't know. It's just
You want to represent the sport well.
Yes.
for sure.
there you go. You want to represent it well. So thank you, Hunter.
You're welcome, everyone. But anyone else in your life that you'd like to thank or?
Deanna, like she kills it on everything. Like she's helped me do all this cable park stuff. Like we wouldn't be able to be here without her.
Yeah.
So what's up, Deanna? Jerry, Action, you know, they're obviously like the backbone of this place. They support and see the vision, which I feel is sometimes hard to like, you know, convince people of or show people. But
Yeah, and I guess I don't want to hold you here too long, but I feel like the importance of Jerry here is, you know, I don't want it to be understated. Where do you think wakeboarding in Michigan would be, or water sports? Let's just say water sports in Michigan would be without Jerry and Action Water Sports.
okay, so brief history on Action. Like it's been a dealership here for like 32 years, roughly. Jerry Brower is the guy who started it, and his wife Chris. I think somebody would have done it, you know, if they didn't.
Yeah.
Like, you know, had a boat dealership and, you know, sold boats here. But the way they do it, I feel like is super unique. And that's why they're continuing to be like the top mastercraft dealer in the entire country, right? And as successful as they are and able to do support water sports with like the cable park where we're at.
Yeah, I agree with that. I had something I was going to say about. Okay, so Jerry likes to get his time on the water, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you think that's a huge factor of this?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think he'd be as supportive as he is if he wasn't
Passionate about it 'cause he does it.
skier or
Yeah.
yeah.
Water skier. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
He's a water skier. We'll just clarify that, but you know, he gets down on the cable park as well.
But I feel like if you're a water skier or wakeboarder, you can at least understand the passions of each other's side. It's like if you're a snow skier or a snowboarder, you can still see why someone would have a passion and why they want to push it or whatever. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? So
Yeah.
All right. Didn't mean to interrupt you there. Is there anything else you'd like to add there before we wrap it up? Or
No, I think, you know, those two, yeah, are pretty much the
Love
two.
it.
There's definitely a handful of other, you know, individuals and organizations and vendors and people that we work with who we wouldn't be able to make all this happen without. But I think you guys all know who you are. So
love to hear it.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, I got oh boy, this is gonna be loud. 1 sec. Got a little t-shirt for you,
Oh,
some
whoa.
koozies
Whoa,
in
whoa.
the bag there.
I feel like I've made it.
Oh yeah, you made it.
I feel like I've made it here.
You made it now.
Can
Yeah.
I pull this out? And
Yeah, if you want,
little
for sure. Got some stickers, koozies.
drinking. Yeah,
it's upside down.
Grab
Yeah,
Matters podcast. Please like and subscribe.
Yeah, do that
follow.
thing. The like and subscribe shit. Do all
you
that.
know. This is amazing.
All
man.
that, man.
I feel like I made it, Hunter.
You did,
Thank
dude. You
man.
made it, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate you coming on. Thanks everyone for listening. See you next time.